bring them to the churches and teach them skills on how to go out of the churches into the society to transform the society in every sphere of life.
He ended up losing all of his clothes. I mean, they stripped him of everything he had on. When he came to the breakfast, all he had was a sheet around him. He was naked, just a sheet, and it was in March or February, and it was freezing cold.
But the thing is, many people don't realize how difficult and challenging it can be to operate a faith-based organization and group.
Try to be as impactful as we can and not impressive. People want to impress rather than make an impact.
The people who are in need are all around the world, all around us.
Faith-based groups play a really significant role in a local community. They must become beneficial and useful and relevant in the community in which they operate and exist. Often I find that they're competing and critical of each other rather than cooperating with each other for the good of that local community. But the thing is, many people don't realize how difficult and challenging it can be to operate a faith-based organization and group. So let's look at the Christian faith-based organizations and churches. Sometimes people don't realize how challenging it can be to operate the faith-based groups, and the job of a pastor or a priest or vicar can be very difficult and challenging, and so sometimes the congregation does not appreciate that. And I know many church leaders will relate to what I'm saying because they feel the pressure and burden of trying to run that faith-based group and become relevant and do a work that's significant.
A pastor, a husband, father of two, a seminary professor with a sense of humor.
It's a trading day, oh yeah, oh yeah.
My dad was a great man. He was a great man with struggles. My dad reached a point of such hopelessness and despair that he took his own life.
I came home from work and I began to notice clues around the house that things were not what they were supposed to be. Eventually I discovered him, and it was a moment that life doesn't prepare you for. How do you tell your kids that their dad is gone and that he took his own life?
I think that the hardest thing for me to deal with was that he honestly doubted the fact that I would love him enough.
Do you mind sharing a little bit of what he said in that note?
He talked about his depression. He talked about having his name on there, and he said he was just very, very sorry. He poured his life into other people, but somehow or other he couldn't extend that to himself.
Facing the harsh reality of loss, Christy says there's also forgiveness.
I still believe that it could have been fixed. It could have been healed in our life.
Do you think that he worried that if this came out, that he could potentially lose his job?
Yes. Yeah, definitely. And there's brokenness in every single one of us. We all have things that we struggle with, but it wasn't so bad that we wouldn't have forgiven it. Mm-hmm. And so many people have said that to us. But for John, it carried with him such a shame, and he couldn't see that. These were real people with real families and real pain. It's not funny. It's not a source for salacious gossip.
What would you tell those people who are potentially contemplating the worst?
Don't underestimate the power of love. Nothing is worth the loss of a father and a husband and a friend. It just didn't merit it. It didn't merit it at all.
According to the New York Times, August 1st, 2010, members of the clergy now suffer from obesity, hypertension, and depression at rates higher than most Americans. In the last decade, their use of antidepressants has risen while their life expectancy has fallen. Many would change jobs if they could. Now, there are many statistics out there online about the challenges of being a pastor, and most of these statistics are incorrect. And even if these numbers were wrong by half, they still highlight a very serious issue, and they don't alter the fact that many church leaders are often under extreme pressure. So let's just look at a couple of those statistics. 13% of active pastors are divorced. 23% have been fired or pressured to resign at least once in their careers. 25% don't know where to turn when they have a family or personal conflict or issue. 25% of pastors' wives see their husband's work schedule as a source of conflict. 33% felt burnt out within the first 5 years of ministry. 33% say that being in ministry is an outright hazard to their family. 40% of pastors and 47% of spouses now suffer from burnout, frantic schedules, and or unrealistic expectations. 45% of pastors' wives say the greater danger to them and their family is physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual burnout. 45% of pastors say that they've experienced depression or burnout to the extent that they need to take a leave of absence from ministry. 50% feel unable to meet the need of the job. 52% of pastors say they and their spouses believe that being in pastoral ministry is hazardous to their family and well-being and health. 56% of pastors' wives say that they have no close friends. 57% would leave the pastorate if they had somewhere else to go or some other vocation they could do. 70% don't have any close friends. 75% report severe stress causing anguish, worry, bewilderment, anger, depression, fear, and alienation. 80% of the pastors say they have insufficient time for their spouse. 80% believe their pastoral ministry affects their family negatively. 90% feel unqualified or poorly prepared for ministry. 90% work more than 50 hours a week. 94% feel pressure to have a perfect family. 70% of pastors feel grossly underpaid. 90% of pastors said the ministry was completely different from what they thought it would be like before they entered the ministry.
Many church leaders leave the ministry because of criticism, because of burnout, because of moral failures. And often when they experience these burnouts and moral failures and times when they feel down, they are just kicked to the curb. And for some strange reason, people seem to expect perfection from church leaders when they are just human, just like everybody else.
That's why you must choose your leaders. Leaders don't put you under bondage and make you choose them. You choose your own leaders. Wow. And so if you choose, if you have you intentionally and purposefully submitted yourself to a leader, it means you honor them. It means you submitted to them for some reasons. And since you have selected them and you have decided to follow them, you must also decide to honor them.
Often pastors and church leaders are very unappreciated. And again, I know many church leaders can relate to what I'm saying. I know we have things like the Pastor's Appreciation Day, which I think is the second Sunday in October each year. And then we have the Pastor's Appreciation Month, which is again in October every year. But it's very true that still many church leaders are very unappreciated for the tremendous work that they do.
Criticisms don't get to you. That is very good. Like you've developed a tough skin. Criticism, it doesn't matter what they say. Okay. You just smile. Yeah. You know, it's one thing for people to ignore, but you just look at it as though you didn't say, thank you. No matter what anybody says, thank you. And you just go on saying what you are saying. And
got the point you're trying to make, especially when it's insultive as calling you among. I cannot affect anybody's opinion, or their opinion is their opinion, so they have the right to their opinion. I don't have to agree with it, so I move on. Yeah, because if you are going to be, you've got to choose your battle. You've got to choose your battle. If you are going to fight and respond to everything, yes, sir, you're going to use your energy to respond to everything, you know, yeah, they are going to deplete you. And then you will not be using energy for building, for construction, for building people, you'll be using it to put up the fire.
Yes, sir.
And to, just, to even be, you'll be using your energy in all the wrong ways and in the wrong things. So it's better to just keep on using your energy for love.
You face something on criticism, and if you say that, Pastor, what makes you strong? Many people would say that behind every successful man there is a woman behind, but I would not disagree to it. But what I would say is that behind my success or the success that I'm working on, there are criticism, and criticisms have made me to become strong, but not at the time.
Now, there are many things that a local congregation can do to support their church leader, and they must do these things because it's a teamwork that's going to make the dream work. When we look at Jesus, we see that he surrounded himself with a team. He wasn't there rowing the boat and feeding the 5,000 with the bread and handing out himself. He had a team of people that were doing these things for him. And it's very important that the local church becomes a team that is assisting their church leader to fulfill a purpose in their local community, something that's significant.
You said in an interview that a pastor is a sower and the members are the ground, and that the pastor has to prepare the ground for the seed. How can a pastor prepare hard-headed members to be good ground?
It's like what Jesus said. He said there were four grounds. Yeah. The first place that the seed fell on was on the rock. So, and it's like it's hopeless. There are members who are like that too, like hard, like rock. But if you have patience, that's number one. If you have patience and you have the right tools, you can actually, with patience and the right tools, get to work on the stony ground and uproot the stones and the rock. Underneath every stone and rock, a soil. So if you have patience, long patience, and the right tools, you will be able to soften every soil. And once you get rid of the stones, then you'll be able to plant your seed.
Well, most times it's actually a difficult place to be.
That's why the very first thing you need for that is long suffering and patience.
Wow, and love comes to play
love.
As well.
Yes.
Wow. So did you have issues like that when you were doing?
Yes, well, I'm a pastor, and I'm a pastor, a very successful pastor. I don't have problem with members so much, or with getting members to grow or churches to grow. God has given me the grace to do that.
Wow, but did you have people that you had to work on over the years?
Yes, all the time. Yeah, every pastor always have that.
Wow. So a pastor that is watching, like, how long did you tell him to expect? For example, someone that is really hard-headed.
Don't take life too serious, like I said. Don't take yourself too serious, and don't take life too serious also. Don't take God too serious. Take it easy. Take it easy with yourself. Take it easy with people. You don't rush. Don't expect immediate results. Just take it easy.
Wow.
You just keep on working with people, showing them love and encouraging them.
Wow. But at what point can a pastor really say to a member or to someone, say, I'm done, like I've had enough, in the sense that this person is actually causing problem, is ruining reputation? It's, at what point can a pastor say, okay, you know what, I'm dismissing you for now, or I'm suspending you, or something like that?
It's not the best thing to do. My own case, I could say, okay, I've got enough with this person, but I will still not stop them from coming to church. Let them become, I might not be working with them individually, personally, but I will still give them a room for change.
So the challenges that I face, that usually when I say the vision of God given to me or released to me, I would say to the church, not all of them can accept it. Some of them, they go all the way to support you financially, prayerfully, and they will also show their physical attention, right, towards the vision. They support you, and some of them, they do not even move, and it's quite difficult for a pastor that you won't get 100% of the support of the church. But that doesn't mean that they are bad people, but usually what happens is that they just do not want to be in the forefront, but they always like to remain on the back curtain and do things at the back. But As a pastor, we would like to see everyone following the leader. I have this second challenge that I would say it is misunderstanding. Misunderstanding, what would I say on this? The word of God being preached sometimes is misunderstood by the congregation. Like not everybody can take rebuke, correction. These days they are longing for messages like you are favored, you are blessed, you are highly anointed. Sometimes they don't come to church for 2-3 weeks and you come to find out, oh, pastor hurt me because of these words which was spoken, he was talking about me.
It's very important that church leaders appreciate the hard work that the people that serve under their ministry and in their congregation do. And when you appreciate people, it causes them to be more active and to produce better results.
A leader in the Christian assembly is supposed to be there to not just serve the people, but to help everybody realize their domain, where they are supposed to be groomed and helped to become kings in their own particular spheres of life as well. So it's a kingdom of kings, not kingdom of slaves. Of course, I understand what they're talking about. Today, most churches look more like kingdom of slaves, where the pastor is the slave owner and all the other people are its subjects. So they only come to listen to him, everybody sitting down, and they bring offering and tithe. That is not kingdom mentality. That is not the way it's supposed to be.
So we all know that spiritual abuse does take place, and by that I mean abuse of power in a local congregation. Those things do happen, and they happen for a reason. And often it can be because a church leader can be under immense pressure with the workload that they have.
Leadership in the kingdom of God should not be one person, either a pastor or apostle, lording it over congregation or all other people. Like, for example, I'm a senior pastor of our church, but I don't see myself as somebody that's more important than members of my church. I just have the role of a leader or as a father figure. But if you are rather using the powerful to do the opposite, to hold, to oppress, to suppress, to cage, that is spiritual abuse.
So if we were to base our opinions of Jesus, of the Bible, on the behavior of Christians, we would think that Jesus was more interested in embarrassing and bashing gay people than he was in helping the orphans. We would think that he's more interested in bombing people than bringing peace and unity. We would think that he's more interested in buildings than he is in helping poor people. So local churches and congregations and faith-based groups must focus on the needs of the people in the very immediate surrounding in which they exist. It's tragic when there are hungry people, there are homeless people within a stone's throw from a local church congregation. That should not be the case. So Ronnie, you're involved in feeding the homeless, your church is involved in feeding the homeless. Tell us more about that, how that began and how your church is involved.
Right, the feeding and the clothing project started quite a while back in the early 2000s. It is based opposite the Charing Cross train station in London.
Okay.
And we are there from 7 in the morning until 9 a.m. and that's every second Sunday.
Okay.
And we give them a full English breakfast, so that's the full works. The food is prepared at a venue in Croydon.
Okay.
But the only thing that we prepare on the streets are the eggs.
Okay.
So we fry the eggs on the street, but everything else is prepared beforehand. And we feed up to the most we've ever fed on any one Sunday was just over 350 people.
Oh wow, that's a lot of people.
But on average it's between 200 to 300. And they get the clothing and they get the food, and they're quite happy with it, because generally you find that lots of charities, they will feed people, but they'll just give them like cheese and pickle onion sandwich and, or tuna and sweet corn and cups of tea, but nothing substantial in terms of something hot and filling. So that's where we step in and do that way.
And how many volunteers does that take?
The number of volunteers is always fluctuating, but not fluctuating in a negative sense. It actually increases because of my post on my social media page on Facebook. So people volunteer and they come down. So on average we have about 20 people, and that includes the youth from my church as well.
Okay, so if people wanted to get involved, how can they get involved?
Just turn up any second Sunday in the month. We are there every second Sunday from January to November, and in December we take them to one of the local churches. So they have a Christmas breakfast and a Christmas lunch/dinner, and we take them in the minibus. And so we have a couple of minibuses that we bus them from Charing Cross to Kitter Road, which is in New Cross, and then they're there practically up until 3 o'clock, and then once they've had their fill we put on a little mini carol concert and stuff like that, and then we take them back to Charing Cross.
And there are people who attend the homeless event here and attend churches in London, but that's not the principal reason why we do it. We just do it to help people whoever they are. So yeah.
Because this thing about what the people are doing with homelessness and rough sleeping is like a vicious circle. There's no end to it.
What is really nice is that a lot of the homeless people, after we fed them, they do come back and they really appreciate what we've done. So they're really grateful. We've even had some homeless people that's given us things like £1 and things like that. And at first we wouldn't take it because we're sort of saying if they're homeless they can't really afford to give us that. But then what we've realised is that it's their blessing. So when we do get that, obviously it goes back into the homeless to help them as well. But yeah, it's a satisfying feeling as well when you actually feed them and you can see they're grateful, and it's good to hear their stories when they do actually get home as well. So yeah.
So why is it important for churches to get involved in this type of projects, social projects?
Personally, as a church here, we believe that you can't be effective just being in the church building. One of the scriptures that preachers like to use all the time is "Go ye into all the world and preach the gospel," but they tend to stay stuck in the four walls. But we believe that to be hands-on and to be practical, it doesn't cost that much to sacrifice a bit of time and give somebody a hot meal. I mean, if you go to any local cafe, a full English breakfast is, I don't know, £5, £6, and we do that times 300. But it is using the resources that people put in to the local church effectively and show the community that we are not just about having a good time in four walls and singing nice songs and hearing good sermons, but we are going up there and making a difference. I mean, it's almost like a drop in the ocean, but at least we are making a difference. We're not saying, well, because it's only a drop in the ocean, why bother? We are just saying, let us start somewhere and do something. Lots of the people that we feed, fortunately, some of them, they manage to get on their feet. Unfortunately, some of them still end up in the same cycle. It is heartbreaking sometimes to see. A couple of months ago, we had a situation where one guy, he ended up losing all of his clothes. I mean, they stripped him of everything he had on. When he came to the breakfast, all he had was a sheet around him. He was naked, just a sheet, and it was in March or February, and it was freezing cold. And he had nothing, barefoot, and all of his skin was blistered and it almost looked like the beginning of frost. It wasn't frostbite as such, but it looked that bad. And life on the streets is not easy. Some people think, oh, it's just your usual winos, or it's just people from Europe or people from some Asian countries. But we've met all sorts of people from all sorts of from different walks of life. We've met an accountant. The accountant we met, I never forget him. The first time I met him, he had to walk out of his flat. He had a flat in Canary Wharf, and he had accumulated all sorts of artifacts and all sorts of things from all the high flying life he was doing.
Right.
This was at the beginning of the recession, and he lost his flat. He had to walk out of his flat with just a suitcase, a police suitcase, and leave everything behind.
Okay.
We've met a surgeon who was retired. He got divorced, lost his house, and he ended up on the street. A surgeon.
Right.
And you're thinking, oh, the people on the street are just homeless, winos, and non-essential people as such, but all sorts of people we come across on the street.
So this type of thing actually makes a difference for those people.
Yes, it does.
So you must be seeing what sort of reaction do you see from people? How, you know, they must appreciate it so much.
They are very, very appreciative. I must say that because when we do it, when we get there at like 6:45, 10 till 7, they're already lined up in a queue waiting because they know that we're coming. When we pull up the vans, they come and they help offload the stuff off the van, they help set the tables up, and they then go back and stay in the queue. I mean, you get the couple of ones that want to jump the queue and want to be boisterous and a bit feisty, but generally they're all queued up and they wait their turn. And we have this policy where we buy enough that they can have seconds. That's one of the major points of what we do. So sometimes not all 300 will come back for seconds, but we always buy enough that they can have seconds, so that there's nothing wasted. We don't throw anything away. By the time we're done at 9 o'clock, 9:15, everything is gone.
Okay, so what would you say to churches who want to get involved with this type of project? Is it best for them to start their own or get involved with someone else who's already doing it? Is it quite challenging to do this type of project?
I think what churches should do, individual churches, is to assess where they are in their local area first off and see if there's something. I mean, in most areas you've got a local Salvation Army or some other type of church-based charity that you can plug into. The way we've done it is because that was somebody else's initiative that we've carried on, so it kind of seems strange for somebody to drive all the way from Bedford to London. But it was just continuing so that it didn't end up being, or we've just had enough of it and just leave them to be. I would suggest checking around the areas you are, and if they aren't, then try to sort something out. You can start small, you don't have to start on a big scale like we do. You can also network. I know that is not a very good word with lots of churches because everybody seems to have their own little fiefdom or kingdom. But if they can locate another church, another charity that is doing something and you want to plug into that, as Tesco says, every little bit helps. So if you plug in and you offer what you can, if they're doing teas and coffees, then you can offer something else. Like for instance, the majority of the people who are doing the one we're doing in London are from the Afro-Caribbean community. So they get fried dumplings, so it's not only just the bacon, eggs and sausage and black pudding. So you can offer whatever little variances from your own backgrounds that you think they will enjoy. They like the porridge because the ones we do the West Indian way, it's got the cinnamon and the spices and the stuff in it. It's not like the bland one that you get off the shelf from Tesco just to pour the water in. And so you offer your little variances that will benefit. But coming back to your original point about working together, I think that a lot of charities and churches need to do that. Just plug in, go outside, as we said earlier about being stuck in the four walls. Everybody can't continue with this mentality of you in your small corner and I in mine. The world is a big place, but your world can start where you are, and then you can go into all the world just from where you are. And lots of the people that we are meeting aren't English per se. They're European, they're West Indian, they're from the African regions, they're from the Asian regions. The world is coming to us. So we don't necessarily have to jump on a plane to say we're going on a missionary trip. They're all around us in our communities, and all we need to do is open our eyes and see and try to be as impactful as we can and not impressive. people want to impress rather than make an impact. And if we look to make an impact rather than impress somebody because we're doing X, Y, and Z and it looks good, it's not about impressing people, it's about making an impact and a positive impact that will help them in their lives and hopefully get them off the streets, get them off the drugs, get them off the different situations that they find themselves in just because somebody took the time to care.
There should be a partnership between these local congregations and government organizations and other faith-based groups. If they were to cooperate and work together, they could achieve a tremendous amount of work in the local community in which they all exist. Now, I was able to travel to Ukraine to speak to Pastor Sunday Adelijah. He built the largest church in Europe by his mid-30s, and one of the things he did was help people who were drug addicts and alcoholics. And over that time that he's been there, over 43,000 people have gone through his program and come out on the other end free and become beneficial in the community in which they exist. Some are business people, some are politicians, and some are successful in other arenas. But I went to speak to him, so let's take a look at that interview.
That we have been preached what I call the gospel of salvation. And what that means is that the emphasis of the churches has been on getting people saved so that they might make heaven, so that they might be able to go to heaven. And that has not done a lot of good to the generality of the country when it comes to national transformation and transforming of the economy and the political system and everything, because people are more focused on not missing heaven, missing out on heaven. So, but you know, when it comes to the New Testament, really, what people have not understood and the gospel that is really lacking in Nigeria is the gospel of the kingdom, which means you don't just get people saved to come to the churches and remain there till they die and go to heaven, but you get them saved, bring them to the churches and teach them skills on how to go out of the churches into the society, to transform the society in every sphere of life, not just to be missionaries and to be evangelists and to evangelize people, but to actually go and be involved in the building process of building heaven on earth. So that is the aspect of the gospel that has not been preached to the Nigerian people. So the Nigerians who might be educated and they might have some skills, they are only working for their own survival, and they only go to church so that God will help them to resolve their own individual problems. So it's a kind of domestic Christianity, kind of egocentric Christianity, rather than a holistic Christianity that is based on stewardship and service to the people and to the land, you know, using their skills and their knowledge to transform their nation and change their environment to reflect the God they believe in. Because here, for example, we've been able to help rehabilitate and restore to the society over 42,000 really alcoholics and drug addicts and their relatives that were not just, they don't just stop drinking or doing that, but they become successful people involved in different areas of life and, you know, contributing back constructively to the society. We already have Christians who just need to be given direction. So we want to be able to train them on how to get involved in transforming every aspect of the society as an individual. But that is the skill that God has given to me. That is the knowledge and that is the experience that the 30 years of my life in the former Soviet Union here has taught me. Now I can bring that to bearing in Nigeria and help Nigerian people not just to practice their faith in the four walls of the church, but to also be able to bring that their faith into the economy, into the political sphere of life, into the media, into the technology, science and technology, medicine, family, and every other sphere of the economy and social life that that will make, you know, the life of ordinary Nigerians much better and will make God much real on a daily sphere, daily living, the daily life of the people, rather than just the religious life of the people.
So while the other people are trying to get people to come in the church, you're trying to get them to go back out and
yes, actually, I have,
yeah.
my when I teach my pastors, I have over 1,000 pastors that I've raised over the years, and my charge to them is that as a pastor, your duty really is not to gather people inside the church, but to actually get rid of people from the church, get them out of them pews. The Bible did not say go ye. The Bible did not say build ye churches and cathedrals and make them sit there until they go to heaven. It said go ye, make them go. So the assignment of the pastor is actually to get people to go, to leave the cathedrals and the churches and go and get themselves engaged in making disciples out of the four walls of the church. And now the thing to do there is what you need to teach them and how to actually be involved in transformation of the society. That is what is supposed to be taught in the churches. Right. Then they must be released to go and actually make that happen on their in daily basis. I have done things wrong, and I know that does not define me. It is evil. It is dangerous when we begin to define people by their failures and by their sins or their weaknesses.
So the approach you're taking is very, very Christ-like. He's not just seeing the thief or the adulterer, as everyone else is saying, stone this person, kill this person. This person's a thief, this person's gay, this person's. You're seeing something different. And you're taking. You're seeing the good in them. Would that be right?
Because if you look at the original, if I'm looking at God saying He created everything, including man and woman, human, and said they are good. So originally, it means originally there is something good in every person, and the content of a man, the original core of the man is good. So it's God's nature, it's God's nature. So that means that the image of God is in everybody, which also means that every other thing that we have done wrong, everything that we are doing wrong is because we've been misled and deceived, and we are getting it right. So if we could find somebody to remove the garbage and to remove the dirt and to clean us up, we will get into that core one day. We will run right into that diamond, into that gold, into that nature of God, into that original part that God said is good, into that image, that likeness of God that is in everybody. So if I go ahead and stigmatize him just because he's doing adultery or is doing gay or is doing something bad in one aspect of his life, if I zero in on that bad thing that he is doing and use that to define his whole totality, that will be killing him.
That person could turn out to be courageous leader.
That is what I've discovered here. A lot of those guys that were called criminals here, that were called alcoholics and drug addicts, they've turned out to be politicians, businessmen, successful, just because I've refused to stigmatize them and I've refused to say this is who you are in totality. If somebody that is, let's say, a gay person right now, that is horrible. We don't approve that lifestyle. We think it's a sinful lifestyle. We don't support it. But I still see that I stopped calling gay people because I think it's offensive. If I am doing something wrong right now, let's say, and then you begin to identify me and call me and brand me or name me by what I do wrong. So, if we try to just say he's just gay, that's the only, you name him the gay.
You're pushing that person away.
Yeah, you remove all the other qualities, all the other good things that might be present in him, you're removing it. That same person might be the best student in his class. That same person might be the best worker in his company. The same person might be a job giver, a job provider, but you have stigmatized him. And when we name a man just by his weakness, we should not identify people by their failures and by their weaknesses. We should not use that to give them identity. That, we should see other things that are in them. Apart from the fact that he's smoking or he's drinking or he's gay, that he might have other brilliant things in him. He might have other good qualities in him. Maybe he's a good son to his father and to his parents. Maybe he's a good neighbor to his neighbors. Maybe he's a good person to his workers or to his colleagues. So if I now say you are just gay, I removed all that. I killed all the good things in him. I destroyed all the 90%. I'm using the 1 little percent or the 1 little thing the guy is doing that I don't like to kill all the 90% of the other things that he has that are good in him. Right. So if we define people by their evil deeds, or if we just use their evil to define them, or if we just use their wrongdoings to define them, or if we just use their mistakes to define them, let me just think about myself. All of us, we might have one weakness or the other that we have done, or one thing or the other we have done wrong, anytime in our lives. If anybody you just zero in on that and use that to define us, who we are, that will not be fair, because apart from me doing that wrong thing that you have seen, there might be other things that I'm also doing, who I am, that really define me better. Right. But if I so it is actually uncharitable to use the wrong or the weakness of any individual to label that person.
Well, Paul said it, and such were some of you.
All of us. All of us had something.
And the thing is, that is ignorance when people behave that way, because they're ignoring the goodness in that person, the qualities, and that's where the word ignorance comes from. Ignore. So you're ignoring the qualities of that person, and that is ignorance.
Yeah.
And you're going beyond that ignorance and attitude. And you're saying, no, there's another way.
Because the original thing is that the nature of God is in every individual. Right. No matter what evil thing he's doing right now, no matter how bad things he's doing right now, he might not even be aware. He might have believed a lie that is bad. He might not even be aware that he has the original nature of God in him. He has the goodness of God in him. We need to convince him otherwise. We need to let him know that, oh no, he's made to be good.
Yes. Well, imagine if there was no son, dad, Elijah. Imagine if somebody had trampled that seed, there'll be none of this.
Yes. This kind of thing I'm talking about, some pastors would think that I'm in error.
Yeah.
That, okay, you want us to accept the gay people, you want us to accept the sinners, the smokers, they begin to attack me on that. But, I know what I'm talking about, and I know I'm getting people that were down and out, that were outcast, that were regarded as nothing, and nothing good will ever come out of them. And I see good things coming out of them. I see them becoming better than the good ones. So I'm going to stick my neck to it.
Wow.
And I think love wins at the end of the day, because Jesus says you should not overcome evil with evil, because if you try to use evil, I mean, if, like, okay, we're going to condemn you, we're going to put you in prison, we're going to charge you, you are bad. So to use evil to try to amend evil, it doesn't work. It only multiplies evil. Right. But if you want to really overcome evil, you must find love, kindness. So only love can overcome evil. Only good can overcome evil. That's the approach I try to use.
Now, just to conclude, I know that church leaders do feel a lot of pressure, but often that pressure is because of their own ego, and what they're doing is based on just personal ambition, and then their heart is not really to help people and to change people and to meet needs. Their agenda is usually to build up a kingdom about them and about serving them and making them successful, and it's not about meeting the needs of people.
I believe every local church has its own call, and there is a purpose for every local church. One of it is to support the needy people. The people who are in need are all around the world, all around us. It is one of the main duty I believe the church has to look into their welfare, whether they are underprivileged, low income, orphans, and we can go on with the list. But a local church, I believe it's their duty to take care of them, to meet their needs. The outreaches that our church are involved in is very recently we started off another community office, I would say, an organization. So it's actually a wing ministry of Jesus Lives Church. It is known as Crown Community Services. In this community services, what we are going to do is we are going to help the need, the poor, people who are really, that we have seen that they really need help. So this Crown Community Services is going to be secular first, because coming from a country, it's an inter-religious country, so we, regardless of race, language or religion, we want to serve the people, and one of it is Crown Community Services. Finally, I would say that we are also involved in free ration, and we are going to move into that even deeper, supplying of rations to underprivileged families, and I believe that these are the main outreaches. Of course, we are doing more than that. These are the main outreaches that our church is involved in. Thank you. God bless you.
In my opinion, many local churches need to close their doors immediately because they're irrelevant, they're not beneficial, they're too heavenly minded and no earthly good at all. And so they need to close the door, because if the horse is dead, it's time to dismount. Now there are many, thousands of churches in the world and in the United Kingdom where we are now. And a lot of them are small churches, less than 100 people. And they feel like they're insignificant, they can't do very much until they have many people. But that's not the case. If you look at it as a local congregation of maybe 30, 40, 50 people, that might seem like it's not many people. But if you look at this as a team, if you looked at it as a team of people, a team of 10 people, a team of 20 people, a team of 40 people, that is a huge team of people who, if that was a business and you had 40 employees or 30 employees or a team of 40, 50 people, you could do tremendous amounts of work and bring tremendous change to a local community. So if a church was to see themselves as a team rather than as a, that idea of a congregation or a church, there's nothing wrong with that, and they will always be that. But if they saw themselves as a team, they could achieve so much more, because sometimes there's so much talent and ability within a congregation, but usually all they're focused on is just activities within the four walls and not meeting the needs of people outside.